And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, I'm going to be talking about the women's side of basketball and just, how the women's standings are for the Olympics, because all of the first games ended up being played. There was a 3-on-3 women's segment that was happening while this game is going on as well. I don't know if you guys are relatively, interested in the 3-on-3 action. I haven't really touched any 3-on-3 Olympic basketball, but if you guys want me to touch on the 3-on-3 Olympic basketball, then I will go ahead and talk about that. But essentially, the 3-on-3, it's literally just a 3-on-3 pickup game. There is no coach, so you just put any kind of either women or men basketball player onto the court, and they play in a 3-on-3, and they have to, just play a regular 3-on-3. And so I'm not really going to focus on that as much as I'm going to focus on the 5-on-5 action. And by the way, the French national team is up 92-84 in overtime. So I just want to go ahead and talk about that. And this guy on Japan is just not missing. Like, somebody give this man a contract. Like, what? He is not missing. I mean, he's short for a guard, but he just is hitting every single shot. Number 5 for Japan. Go look him up, please. But aside from that, let's go ahead and talk about the women's side of basketball and their standings. So, unlike the men's stages, they have their own groupings, yes, but the women's stages and their groupings, they're a little bit different, right? So it's like, how in the for the men's basketball, the United States, they have to have South Sudan in the same group as they do. The women, on the other hand, they don't have South Sudan in their group, and there is no South Sudan anywhere on this list. They did not even qualify to play for the Olympics, on the women's side at least. So basically, for USA basketball, Aja Wilson and Brenna Stewart, they were the leaders of the United States basketball team. They combined for 46 points and 21 rebounds, 7 assists, and 7 blocks to start off Group C play. And all of the games, they are already concluded, so we're just waiting until tomorrow for those games to resume yet again. Aja Wilson led United States with 24 points, with 13 rebounds and 4 blocks, while Stewart ended up getting 22 points and 8 rebounds. And it's like the United States team is so much better than all of the other teams that they ended up blowing out they're the only team that, actually, no, I lied. They aren't the only team, but they're one of the very few teams that ended up blowing out their opposition in these games. So for Group A, the teams that are in Group A are Serbia, Puerto Rico, Spain, and China. Those are the teams in the Group A in the standings. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up this graph right here. Those are the standings right now. Then in the Group B standings, you have, I believe, in the Group B standings, yes, you have France and Canada, as well as Nigeria and Australia. And then finally in the Group C standings, you have the United States, Germany, Belgium, and Japan. And yes, Belgium, they're one of those teams that, they didn't qualify for the men's, but, they qualified for the women's. So just shows how different the way that it works and things like that. So for this one, Serbia and Puerto Rico, Serbia ended up taking, the win against Puerto Rico. This is the only group A is the only group where the point differential is not all that much. Like, you can see that the point differential is nothing but single digits for all of these teams. So Serbia, they ended up playing Puerto Rico, and they ended up winning by only 3 points, which obviously, that is enough. A win is a win. And then Spain ended up playing China, and Spain ended up winning by just 1 point. The final score was 90-89, and since, they were able to win by 1 point, they were able to get in a better spot in the standings. So Spain, they, the only problem now is if either of these teams, if either of these teams end up losing in a blowout, that could drop their point differential dramatically, and it could affect their entire spot in the standings. So no one in this group is safe. Group A is arguably, the most hostile group right now. Now, next group on this list is Group B with France, Nigeria, Australia, and Canada. France, they ended up playing Canada in this matchup. They ended up winning 75-54, which in turn gives France a 21-point differential and Canada a minus 21-point differential. And of course, Canada is going to be at the bottom of this list and at the bottom of the Group B standings because the Nigerian team ended up surprisingly beating the Australian team by 13 points. The score was 75-62 in favor of Nigeria. So now Nigeria, they hold a spot in the group standings, and because unlike the previous standings, these ones right here, all of these are blowouts. So even if France were to lose by a couple of points, their point differential would still keep them on top of the standings, just in case, there's a team that gets tied, right? Now, finally, the Group C stages, which is, arguably, the best group stage ever because they have the United States. They have, and as always, with the United States and United States basketball, the United States is at number one. Like, as always, as I say it every single time, because, the women's side of basketball, it's almost guaranteed. As much as the men are guaranteed, the women are guaranteed a gold medal at least, 2 times over. They're that good. And so they had a point differential of plus 26. They beat the Japanese team by 26 points. It was 102-76. They were the only team in the entire Olympics so far to have 100 points. And this is just I believe this gets marked as their 56. Yeah, this was United States' 56th consecutive Olympic win for the women's national team. And that just shows you just how dominant this women's basketball team has always been throughout the history of basketball. They just always win, and it's rare that they lose to anyone. And obviously Germany, they ended up playing Belgium, and Germany ended up winning by 14 points. And Belgium, since they lost by 14, they're lucky that they weren't going up against the United States because their point differential would have dropped dramatically. And the United States, they're just always, especially on the women's side, they're just better. There's nothing else that can really be said other than, the fact that they're just better. Now, unlike what most people think, they are not just better just because they're American. That's not what I'm saying. They're just better, period. They're athletes. And on top of that, one thing that I should note is that the athleticism on the women's basketball team for the United States is just so much better and full of much more talent than the Japanese team, because Brittany Griner, so much taller than every other female on the Japanese team. It was just the height difference was staggering. And it's she's gonna rack up one of these games. She's gonna rack up a lot of blocks against these teams, and it's it's really it's ridiculous. It's honestly ridiculous, how the height difference between the United States athletes, some of the United States athletes are compared to the Japanese athletes. So with that out of the way, we are out of time for this third segment. So now I will go ahead and go to the fourth segment, where I talk about the French game that just ended up happening and just ended up concluding. I'll talk about the stats, talk about some of the best players that were performing in this game, as well as what I saw from, the brief few seconds that I was able to just look at the TV and watch right after this short break. So be sure to stay tuned for my thoughts.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.